Ever sat in a packed room during the championship and felt completely outside the moment? The television blares. Commentators scream. Every face around you is locked onto the screen with an intensity that suggests something vital is unfolding. The atmosphere is electric, charged with a tension you can observe but not absorb. And inside your chest, there's nothing. No surge, no investment, no magnetic pull toward what everyone else finds captivating. You're present but untouched, watching something designed for a frequency you don't receive. This isn't ordinary boredom. You comprehend the action. You track the score, recognize the strategy, understand why that play mattered. But the emotional transmission fails to arrive. It's like overhearing a conversation in a language you studied but never spoke fluently. Then comes the self-interrogation. What's defective in me? Why does this energize everyone around me while I remain unmoved? Why does their world light up while mine stays dark? Most people never linger in this observation. They either manufacture enthusiasm or silently conclude they're broken. But what if pausing here reveals something crucial? What if this isn't emotional failure but recognition? What if you're simply discovering that this spectacle wasn't architected for your wiring, your attention architecture, or your pathway to connection? That discovery isn't deficiency. It's self-knowledge beginning to surface. Once you recognize the signal doesn't reach you, you notice something else. How others interpret that absence. In a society where athletics serve as universal dialect, not speaking fluently marks you quietly as an outsider. When someone asks, "Catch the match yesterday?" and your response creates awkwardness, there's a beat of silence, a micro-expression, sometimes humor that carries an edge, sometimes a glance that communicates disbelief. From that instant, narratives form. You're withdrawn. You're performatively contrarian. You lack some fundamental social ingredient. The absence of passion gets decoded as absence of humanity, as though sports enthusiasm were mandatory for membership in the community. What gets overlooked is this: disinterest isn't hostility. It isn't elitism, and it isn't numbness. It's simply misalignment between what a culture elevates as significant and what genuinely resonates with a specific consciousness. Psychologically, we struggle with people who don't reflect our excitement back to us. Their calm reads as criticism, even when it carries no judgment whatsoever. So we categorize it. We medicalize it. We transform preference into pathology. That's where countless people absorb the wrong narrative about themselves. They begin believing they're missing components when actually nothing is absent. They're not avoiding connection. They're simply not connecting through this particular channel. Understanding that distinction restructures everything. To grasp why athletics command such gravitational pull for so many, you must travel beyond the arena into human antiquity. Throughout most of our timeline, survival required tribal belonging. Your group was your insurance policy. It determined your access to food, protection, reproduction. Acceptance equaled safety. Rejection equaled mortality. Evolution hardwired this urgency deep into neural architecture. Contemporary sports interface directly with that ancient circuitry. Fundamentally, athletics manufacture a clarified, emotionally supercharged version of tribal conflict. Your territory versus theirs, your symbols versus theirs, your alliance against the opposition. The stakes register as elevated despite no actual material consequences, and your nervous system reacts as though survival hangs in the balance. When a franchise wins, the brain floods with dopamine and testosterone, chemicals linked to reward, dominance, and triumph. When a franchise loses, cortisol spikes. Research demonstrates that spectators exhibit measurable hormonal fluctuations following contests, mirroring biological patterns our ancestors experienced after successful hunts or territorial conquests. This isn't poetic. It's physiological. The brain cannot differentiate between symbolic victory and actual survival success. In 2008, scientists documented elevated testosterone in men whose preferred presidential candidate won the election compared to those whose candidate lost. The setting shifts. The mechanism remains constant. Athletics work because they provide a contained, culturally approved method to stimulate the tribal brain. You access the belonging, the catharsis, the collective identity without the physical jeopardy that historically accompanied it. For countless people, this feels stabilizing, vitalizing, necessary. And none of this happens accidentally. It's the output of systems engineered to communicate fluently with one of humanity's most primitive neural regions. Here's where the misunderstanding typically intensifies. When sports ignite something ancestral in most people, it's tempting to assume anyone who doesn't experience that ignition lacks a basic human instinct. But psychologically, that's not the mechanism at all. The tribal switch isn't malfunctioning. It simply doesn't activate as readily or under identical conditions. Everyone possesses a threshold for what triggers belonging. For some, geography suffices. The municipality where you were born, the franchise your parents followed, the colors that decorated your weekends growing up. For others, that threshold sits higher. Loyalty must be earned through shared principles, shared labor, or shared creation, not assigned by geographic accident. From that vantage point, sports fandom can appear strangely random. The team you're supposed to champion got determined by where your family resided at one moment in history. The roster rotates constantly. The ownership consists of distant entities whose commitment is financial, not personal. Franchises relocate immediately if economics dictate. Yet fans are expected to provide unconditional emotional investment. For certain minds, that equation doesn't balance. Their nervous system hesitates and quietly poses a question most people never voice. What exactly am I being asked to bond with here? When the answer doesn't feel authentic or mutual, the signal dissolves. Not from cynicism, but from lucidity. This doesn't indicate they reject belonging. It indicates they're selective about it. Their tribal instinct reserves itself for spaces where connection feels reciprocal, enduring, and substantive. Communities constructed around ideas, around mastery, around shared purpose that doesn't reset annually. So when the tribal switch doesn't engage, it's not indifference, it's discernment. For many people, this divergence doesn't materialize suddenly in adulthood. It develops quietly, long before anyone ever inquires, "So, what's your team?" Our nervous systems get sculpted early by what registers as safe, regulating, and meaningful in our developmental environments. In some households, athletics are a bonding ceremony. Weekends orbit around games. Emotions flow openly, and excitement operates within predictable containers. For a child in that ecology, sports become associated with attachment and security. But that's not universal. Some people mature in homes where volume already signified danger. Raised voices didn't announce celebration. They announced conflict. Crowded spaces weren't energizing. They were dysregulating. In those environments, the nervous system learns vigilance, not relaxation into collective fervor. High stimulation doesn't register as enjoyable. It registers as something requiring management. Others develop in families where emotional attunement wasn't constructed around shared performances at all. Attention emerged through dialogue, creativity, collaboration, or silent presence. Meaning existed in depth, not decibels. In those homes, identity formed around interior landscapes rather than exterior demonstrations. Over time, the brain calibrates. It begins associating safety with concentration, solitude, or intimate engagement rather than group intensity. This isn't avoidance, it's adaptation. The nervous system is executing exactly what it learned. There's also a subtler dimension. Some children discover early that emotional investment without agency carries risk. When outcomes are volatile or when disappointment isn't properly contained, the brain grows cautious about attaching to things beyond its influence. Watching others succeed or fail on your behalf may never feel satisfying if your system prioritizes autonomy over spectacle. So by the time adulthood arrives, the orientation is already established. Not because something malfunctioned, but because something adapted successfully. The preference for depth over display, for creation over consumption, is often the quiet fingerprint of a nervous system that learned what it required to feel regulated. One of the least examined reasons some people never descend into sports obsession has nothing to do with emotion whatsoever. It has to do with bandwidth. Your brain possesses limited cognitive territory. There's only so much capacity available for deep commitment. things you monitor, recall, invest in, and revisit across time. Being a genuine fan isn't passive. It demands learning lineups, legacies, tactics, data, feuds, and narratives that span decades. It's not merely watching, it's maintaining a mental database. For many people, that database is already occupied. Some minds allocate their attention early toward systems instead of spectacles. They learn how economies function, how compositions are structured, how instruments operate, how concepts interconnect. Others invest in expertise, constructing a craft, perfecting a skill, understanding something most people glance past. Their attention doesn't fragment, it concentrates. From this perspective, disinterest in sports isn't failure to engage. It's prior allocation. The passion bandwidth is filled, and somewhere along the journey, often unconsciously, there's a calculation. Time spent memorizing statistics versus time spent developing competence. Emotional energy attached to outcomes you cannot control versus energy invested where effort accumulates. Neither choice holds moral superiority, but they represent fundamentally different orientations. People who don't follow sports haven't abandoned focus. They've concentrated it. Their minds are already running extended games, initiatives, endeavors, systems that don't reset every season. The stadium isn't vacant. It's simply hosting something different. Understanding this reframes the inquiry. It's not why don't you care? It's what did you care about instead? There's a reason watching athletics can feel almost visceral, even when you're sitting motionless. Inside your brain exist cells called mirror neurons. They activate not only when you execute an action, but when you observe someone else execute it. This is why you recoil when you see someone stumble. Why your muscles tense when an athlete accelerates toward the goal line. Neurologically, you're not just observing, you're simulating. When a quarterback delivers a flawless throw or a striker nets a critical goal, the same motor and reward circuits illuminate in the spectator's brain, as if they were the one making the play. On some dimension, the brain processes the victory as collective, vicarious. This is one of the engines powering sports obsession. But mirror neurons don't fire indiscriminately. They require identification. You must perceive yourself in the person you're observing. You must sense a psychological bridge. That could be me or that represents me. Without that bridge, the simulation weakens. The emotional dividend never fully materializes. For people who don't obsess over sports, this system still functions. It just attaches elsewhere. Their mirror neurons might illuminate watching a musician execute a complex passage, a craftsperson transform raw material into something exact, or a thinker articulate an insight with precision and nuance. The surge is identical. The target differs. The difference isn't emotional capacity. It's chosen heroes. Some people borrow their sense of motion and purpose from athletes on a field. Others borrow it from creators, builders, and explorers of concepts. The question was never whether they could experience that vicarious thrill. It was always who they felt connected enough to experience it with. Beneath the jokes, the small talk, and the polite nodding along, there's a layer most people never acknowledge carrying. Shame. Not loud shame. Quiet shame. The kind that surfaces when you're asked again if you watch the game and you already know your answer will manufacture distance. So you soften it. You equivocate. You say, I didn't really follow it. Instead of the truth, it didn't touch me at all. Over time, these moments accumulate. You start feeling slightly misaligned with the room, like you're perpetually half a beat out of rhythm with what everyone else finds thrilling. And because humans are social learners, your brain starts searching for the defect. Why don't I experience this? Why does it seem effortless for everyone else? In a culture that treats shared enthusiasm as evidence of normalcy, neutrality can register as flaw. Disinterest gets misread as superiority. Silence gets mistaken for vacancy. And gradually many people internalize the idea that something is absent in them. But shame thrives on misattribution. What's actually occurring isn't emotional deficit, it's incompatibility. Your nervous system isn't damaged. Your attention isn't frozen. They're just not engineered to illuminate on command for collective spectacle. The shame originates from comparing internal truth to external expectation. Once that distinction becomes visible, the burden begins dissolving. You're not failing to participate. You're participating differently. And there is nothing defective about a system that refuses to manufacture enthusiasm for acceptance. It's important to articulate this clearly. There is nothing wrong with the way sports extract people from their daily existence. For many, a major game is a sanctioned intermission. For several hours, work vanishes. Anxiety softens. Attention contracts to something simple and communal. Time collapses. In psychological terms, that's absorption, a state not dissimilar to meditation. And for many people, it's restorative. But absorption isn't exclusive to stadiums and broadcasts. People who don't follow sports aren't immune to the need for respite. They just discover it through different portals. In the workshop, where hours disappear unnoticed. In the studio, where hands move before thoughts organize. In writing, programming, constructing any space where the mind becomes fully present and the external world recedes. The difference isn't escape versus engagement. It's the direction of the energy. Watching a game absorbs attention outward into someone else's performance and outcome. Other forms of absorption pull attention inward into creation, problem-solving, or refinement. One consumes a completed narrative, the other inhabits an emerging one. Neither path is superior. They regulate different nervous systems in different ways. For some people, collective excitement restores equilibrium. For others, quiet immersion accomplishes the same. What matters is the effect, the sense of presence, the temporary relief from self-consciousness, the feeling that for a while you're exactly where you're meant to be. People who don't choose sports haven't rejected respite. They've simply chosen forms of absorption that leave something behind when the moment concludes. When you step back and examine the complete picture, a quiet truth begins settling in. People who don't obsess over sports aren't standing outside of life watching it pass by. They're participating, just not in the most visible way. While some invest their attention in shared spectacles, others invest it in slow, personal arenas that don't arrive with crowds or commentary. Their silence during the game isn't emptiness. It's concentration. It's a mind turned toward something. It's building, refining, or attempting to understand. Something that won't be determined by a final score or reset when the season concludes. This isn't about rejecting joy, community, or tradition. Most people who don't follow sports understand the appeal completely. They witness the laughter, the bonding, the release it provides their friends. They just know with a calm certainty that their energy belongs somewhere else. Attention is the most valuable resource you possess. Where you direct it shapes the kind of person you become. Some people direct it toward watching championships unfold. Others direct it toward creating something that didn't exist before. That difference doesn't make one path superior to the other, but it does explain why the signal never landed and why it never needed to. If this video gave language to something you felt but never quite articulated, you're not alone. I'd appreciate hearing your experience. Drop a comment and share where your attention naturally flows instead. And if you want more conversations like this about the quiet patterns of human consciousness, the things we don't usually name, consider hitting that like button and subscribing to Psycho2Mind. We explore these spaces together.